Thank you, John. It's a real pleasure to get a chance to introduce today's speakers. We're here to talk about gridlock, traffic, a topic near and dear to your hearts. Our regional transportation systems are currently handling demands that they weren't designed for. And there actually is a group working in our community to bring together the public and private sectors to find solutions. That group is aptly named Commuting Solutions, nonprofit based in Louisville. And here to speak today are Audrey DeBarros, the Executive Director of Commuting Solutions, and Kathleen Bracke, the Board Chair.
Thank you, David. Come on up.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity to come before you today to talk about transportation. Transportation is a hot topic this week with BVSD starting classes, CU Boulder classes getting in gear. There's a lot more people needing transportation to get around. I wanted to thank David Driscoll and Lena Kaki, who wasn't able to be here today, to invite us for being part of your program. So thank you again for this opportunity. I'm sure you can all relate to this caricature. It's everybody else's problem and fault for contributing to the in-commuting coming into the city of Boulder in particular. But it's really not very funny, is it? As David mentioned, transportation is a big problem in the state of Colorado and definitely in Boulder and Boulder County. We're here today to give you a little bit of history about how we got here and some of those solutions that we're working towards in order to bring funding and also regional transportation and local planning efforts underway in order to solve that problem. But we'll need your help, not only to help get the word out about the transportation funding gap, because that is the biggest problem that we're facing, but also when there's opportunity to fund transportation, that you say yes. So over 20 years, Commuting Solutions, in partnership with all of our local elected officials, originally from the US 36 corridor, from Boulder all the way to Westminster, came together in the 1990s when gridlock was just beginning. And we formed a coalition to really elevate the political power of our region and to call attention to the needs of the former US 36 toll road. As David mentioned, we Commuting Solutions brings together the communities, but also businesses and jurisdictions, as well as the CU Boulder, nonprofit organizations, and all of our chambers of commerce, including the Boulder Chamber. Together, we have been a strong voice to elevate the needs in our region. Together, we developed a regional plan for the US 36 corridor, which led to us working together with our transportation partners of RTD, CDOT, our federal government, our congressional members, our state government, in order to fund the US 36 Express Lanes project, which was completed in 2017 and really led the multimodal future of our region. The map here shows a rendering of those investments where the express lanes added new capacity. We started bus rapid transit on US 36 due to Fast Tracks funding, and we built a corridor-wide bikeway from Boulder to Westminster. To learn more about that project, we provided a fact sheet here that you're welcome to take with you and refer to. But soon after that, it became aware that the rest of our multimodal system, such as the Northwest Rail Corridor, was going to be a longer-term investment. RTD, unfortunately, did not have the funding to complete commuter rail from Boulder all the way to Longmont. And that led to a consensus-building endeavor with our local governments and RTD to agree to what's called the Northwest Area Mobility Study. And what's significant about this is that it identified short, near, and long-term transportation investments to improve transit access in our region. So you can see how the map that I showed you before and the map that I am showing you here today includes a number of arterial bus rapid transit corridors to move people while we still advocate and try to bring forward Northwest Rail. We have identified about $3 billion in regional transportation needs between now and the year 2030-35. Yeah. Of those arterial BRT corridors, one of our highest priorities, or our highest priority, is the State Highway 119 corridor between Boulder and Longmont, and you'll be hearing a little bit more about that from Kathleen, but we're currently working very hard to identify funding for this $220 million project, recognizing that it's important that we connect the two biggest employment centers in Boulder County. There are 5 other arterial corridors within Boulder County and Broomfield County that we're actively trying to move forward as well. So Northwest Rail, we don't want to forget this. This is a fast track's commitment to our region. The RTD board back in April just reconfirmed or recommitted to completing fast tracks. This was a significant commitment because we do have several new board members on the RTD board. They also, in April, committed to what's called Peak Service Northwest Rail exploration, where they are currently working with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe, who owns the tracks, to explore operating service 3 trips in the morning going from Longmont to Denver, and 3 trips going from Denver to Boulder. So getting the service started instead of operating 55 trains a day. Let's see if we can get something moving on this corridor sooner rather than later. So stay in touch with us regarding what's happening with this conversation as RTD continues to try to move the needle with the Burlington Northern on Northwest Rail. So Colorado's transportation needs as a state are vast. The funding mechanism that funds transportation is primarily the gas tax, which has not increased since the 1990s. So basically the purchasing power of the gas tax is about half of what it is or was then that it is now. CDOT has identified currently around $9 billion in funding needs throughout the state of Colorado. And it really just has enough revenue to get by to maintain the existing system. So this is a big problem, as David said, that is only going to get worse because Colorado is a very, very wonderful place to live and work and play. So traffic will only be worse as time goes on unless we get creative and are brave to figure out a long-term sustainable funding source. As part of this endeavor to draw attention to the transportation needs of the Northwest region, the US 36 Mayors and Commissioners Coalition and Commuting Solutions led last year an education effort called Transportation Matters, and I just wanted to quickly show you a 1-minute video to summarize that endeavor.
The Denver metro area's Northwest region is a vibrant hub for business. But we're crashing into the moment when our competitive advantages as an economic region are at risk. Traffic and congestion are impacting the access and productivity of all types of businesses. Our region can't rely on current statewide transportation funding, as there is already a backlog of $9 billion. Employers struggle to recruit and retain employees here because of their commute times, while employees struggle to pay for transportation, now their second highest expense next to housing. Our economic boom is causing productivity and quality of life to come to a standstill, unless, of course, we come together for solutions. With innovative funding partnerships, we can provide commuters with easy-to-embrace options that get them where they need to be. This is how we strengthen our position as the region's leader in the new economy, today and well into the future.
Sorry, Kathleen, that jumped ahead. I think a couple of my slides were missing. But I'll just go from memory here. Last year, you might recall that there was a statewide ballot issue to fund transportation called Let's Go Colorado, Proposition 110. And this was a statewide endeavor campaign led by the private sector. We have business community coming out to support this endeavor. Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce. Whoops. Yeah, one more back. Unfortunately, there was an additional transportation ballot issue called Proposition 109, and neither of them passed last year. Ours, of course, was the 110 that we were really hoping to see move forward to fund multimodal funding throughout the state of Colorado. This was a very large endeavor, took a lot of work and collaboration and political support, and so it was very unfortunate that it didn't pass. For 2019, we have a new governor, we have a Democratic-led House and Senate, and had just come off of a statewide ballot issue. And so the legislature spent most of their time addressing other priorities in the state of Colorado than transportation. Some very important public policy issues, but transportation, unfortunately, wasn't their top one. Despite that, the legislature identified about $800 million out of that $9 billion need for transportation, so we're extremely grateful for that, but it still does not address the long-term needs for our state. This November, there will be one ballot issue, Proposition CC, that will ask voters if we can keep and spend revenue that the state generates. And about 1/3 of that funding would go to transportation, the rest to education. So again, we're hopeful that the state and voters like you will support ballot issues like this because it all helps, both our state government as well as our local communities. So what's next? We're eager to see the outcome of Proposition CC. There are discussions going on both in the Denver metro area as well as in the Boulder County area regarding other regional efforts to fund transportation, recognizing that a statewide effort may not be feasible in the near future. So we're participating in all of those opportunities and conversations. And we're waiting to see if a 2020 ballot issue for transportation will be coming forward. In the meantime, we're fortunate to have communities and CU Boulder who are continuing to invest in their regional and local transportation planning, and recognizing the membership of the Boulder Rotary Club. I am excited to have you hear from Kathleen Bracke, who is the Go Boulder manager, to tell you more about the city's transportation plan update and their funding conversations locally.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Audrey and David, and to all of you at Rotary for the opportunity to be here today. We really appreciate it. And I want to be able to share some of the information on the local front for transportation here in Boulder. Before I jump in, though, I want to say that Rotary has a very special place in my heart. When I was in high school, I was fortunate to go on the Rotary Exchange program to Japan and also to Germany. So to be here today and to see the young people that have gone on the trips and then are embarking is pretty amazing. It definitely makes a change in your whole life. So, so I'm here today to share some of the work we're doing in Boulder, and really it's the work that all of you are doing in the community. I think it's important to start from the great foundation that the Boulder community has for a strong multimodal transportation system. This has not come about by accident over the years. It's really through many years of dedicated work and planning, work from the City Council, from the Transportation Advisory Board, and then working with our local and agency partners like Commuting Solutions, Boulder Transportation Connections, RTD, and CDOT. So we're making a lot of things happen, but we also recognize there's a long way to go. This is an image when we've been talking about funding. We call it the long and winding road that we've been on in transportation to seek funding for both local and regional solutions. So again, we've made some progress over the years, but we know there's a long way to go from here. One of the things that we're working on, again, is thinking about the context of transportation from a community perspective. and what I call the regional ecosystem that we're operating within. We all want to travel for our daily needs. We talk about transportation in our work. It's connecting people with each other and where they want to go. And we are recognizing that there are more and more demand for regional trips, people wanting to commute into Boulder to access jobs, and then people commuting around the region for different services and education and healthcare. So how do we design our transportation system to serve the local needs as well as the regional needs? Part of the work that we're doing currently is updating Boulder's transportation master plan. I'm really excited to say the draft plan is out for review. It's been released this week. It's been an initiative that's been going on for over 18 months, and again, lots of community input and ideas have come forward to help inform all of the different areas that we're working on in the city that create that integrated travel network that we need. So I encourage you to take a look at the plan that's out there. One of the other exciting components, I think, of this is this year's TMP, 2019, represents the 30th anniversary of Boulder's Transportation Master Plan. So again, the community has been investing decades in planning and implementing for transportation. So as we look at our current plans, what is that next 30, 50 years going to look like as well? So one of the things that's really important is how do we design for the future? And we often talk about our safe and complete streets. We want everything to work safely and conveniently and reliably for people using all modes of transportation. But we also recognize that change is coming in terms of technology. We see it today with more and more people using transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft. You hear more and more about connected and autonomous vehicles. And so the infrastructure system needs to be upgraded with these communication systems so that vehicles can talk to one another and people can talk to the different modes of service that are out there. So you're hearing a lot in the community around broadband and the importance of implementing that. Again, it's part of that overall complete and safe and smart street system. Another important part of the work that we're doing, and it touches on the prior slide as well, is safety. You'll hear us talk often about our Vision Zero safety initiatives. Unfortunately, Boulder is very similar to our surrounding region and the country as a whole, and that our crashes for people using all modes of transportation are increasing rather than decreasing. And so we need to be doing more in all areas to make a safer system for people who are walking, biking, driving, riding motorcycles, all the different types of modes that are out there. And again, it comes down to all of us. There's not one thing we can do from an engineering standpoint. It really takes that combination of education, enforcement, evaluation, and engineering to make a difference. This is the map on the city's renewed vision for transit. And you'll notice that it really overlays with the map that Audrey showed of the regional corridors. So you see the large red corridors representing 119, or the diagonal to Longmont, also State Highway 7. And that actually will connect Boulder all the way out east to Brighton and be that multimodal corridor with the managed lanes, bus rapid transit, and commuter bikeways, and then similarly continuing to improve US 36 as well. But the blue lines and the other lines are really then how we emphasize within the city and how are we improving those connections as well. Another important part of this particular transportation master plan update is updating our pedestrian plan. And years ago, gosh, over 20 years ago, walking was identified as the primary mode of transportation within the city of Boulder. And you think about it, it's really every trip we take starts with a walking trip. It might be from our house to our car, our house to the transit stop, but walking really is something that we all need to be able to do. So as part of this particular plan, we are updating the pedestrian plan and bringing it into the new era, new day, and how are we designing a system that works for people of all ages and stages of life. In addition, as part of the plan update, we've identified what we call low-stress networks, both for walking and for biking, recognizing that we have a lot of great bicycle lanes today and off-street multi-use paths, but some of our facilities are really designed for people who have either been riding bikes for many years or are very advanced cyclists or frequent cyclists. But we really want to be able to enhance the system so that it feels comfortable for people of all ages. We talk about 8 years old to 80 years old. And so you'll see some of the projects that we're working on. The 13th Street project is almost finished. We'll be having an opening for that later this month. And then you probably read the article in the paper this morning about the North Broadway project as well. But how do we enhance the system that we have so that it's more safe and more comfortable for more people? So that's an important part of our work. In addition, I mentioned all of the partnerships that we work on together. A lot of the work comes under the umbrella of what we would call transportation demand management. It's really about giving people options and choice to use the system for a variety of different ways. And this is one of the areas that we see rapidly changing, where people are thinking more about transportation as a mobility service and on demand, rather than more of the traditional ways that we've looked at transportation in the past. And speaking of the future, we do a lot of thinking about this. And what are those new technologies, again, that are already in place today, and certainly more that are coming. Some of these images represent autonomous transit. So how are we linking together electric vehicles, transit vehicles, and other types of what often get called micro-mobility options, like bike share, scooter share, car share, things like that. And when we think about all of these things, it's not about the technology in and of itself. We look at them through the lens of how does this new technology help advance the community goals? How does it advance safety, neighborhood livability, economic vitality, air quality, and climate initiatives? So it's really about how do these new things help us achieve that community-based future, not just the technology in and of itself. So we do have some pilots that are underway, that are either actively underway now or coming up. Soon we'll be having some pilots around testing the e-scooters. They're very kind of controversial topic. Some people love them, some people don't. Different cities are having different experiences with them, but we will be having some demonstrations around the community for people to try those. And then we're looking at a lot of other types of, again, that mobility on demand and mobility as a service options as well. And again, not only for maybe commute trips, but how are we integrating these new types of technologies to help people access other types of service? So in the past, there was more of a dial-a-ride type service. On demand, people had to call in. Well, how can we have more phone-based or smartphone-based apps so that people can access those services as well for medical appointments or shopping trips? So we talk about funding a little bit. It's just, again, kind of taking that, Audrey talked about kind of the statewide and regional perspective. Locally, the majority of Boulder's funding comes through the local sales tax, and then we do receive some of the gas tax return and then federal funding for grant programs. The other challenge that we're facing locally, as Audrey said, that purchasing power decline is affecting us very much locally. Sales tax is a volatile funding source, and then on the cost side, costs for concrete, all of the materials that we use to build and maintain the transportation system are going up, and they're outpacing the increase in sales tax. So basically what's happening is the blue represents what we call essential services. So it's the core services of operating and maintaining the system, the snow plowing, the street sweeping, signing, striping, things like that. More and more of the budget is going to take care of those services, but only at the current level. We're not actually able to increase or improve the level of service that we're providing today, and we're only able to provide fewer and fewer of the new system enhancements over time. So what's happening at the statewide level is happening locally in our microcosm as well. And you all see this, right, on a daily basis. We have potholes, we're struggling to keep up with some of the street maintenance, median maintenance, snow maintenance, and that takes a toll on the system. And it's just like your house. If you don't take care of your house at a certain level, your repairs start to become more and more expensive. So we're looking at ways where we can enhance local funding to help better maintain the core service. The graph on the right is, I call it our report card. It's the Transportation Report on Progress. We do this every 2 years. The next one will be coming out in 2020. But we really grade ourselves. How are we doing on all of our measurable objectives? And in some cases we're doing okay, but in other areas we're not. And so we know we need to get better in many of these areas, and we need the resources to do that. So these are some of the ideas that have come up through a recent community working group that's been focused on looking at transportation funding options. On the local level, one of the ideas that they've come up with is what's traditionally known as a transportation utility fee. It's really looking at the transportation as a utility, just like water, energy, things like that. And then on the regional scale, looking at what can be done, partnering again with the Boulder County communities or statewide and regional solutions. I'll say there's no magic answer in this. It's really going to take a combination approach of what can we do locally and what can we do both regionally and statewide. So this is the transportation vision from the community process of updating the transportation master plan. I'd say again, in a lot of these areas, we're doing well, and we have done well over the years, but we know we have a long way to go to get better, and we need your help to get there. So we appreciate your interest and your involvement in transportation, and please get involved with us and share your ideas and your feedback. So with that, we will have a bright future ahead. And if there's times, we'd be glad to answer any questions that you have as well. Yes? I'm not sure your protocol for. Okay. Sorry.
The first thing, two things. The first thing is, I grew up in Atlanta, and they had a philosophy there that they could build their way out of this problem. So they put lane after lane, subdivided roads, and created huge highways to transport the population around. And all it did was continue the gridlock, and it got worse. So I don't think we can build our way out of this.
Correct.
The second point I want to ask about is that most of the costs of cars, which we're all addicted to, are externalized. So we get this screaming deal to drive a car wherever we want. And if you have that kind of deal, you're not going to get people to take other modes of transportation. So I want to know your response to that.
Sure, we can both take a stab at that. Well, you're absolutely right. There is no way to build our way out of congestion. It's shown up in Atlanta, LA, pick a city. It's just not possible. And so what we want to look at is how do we maximize and optimize the use of the existing system we have today. And that's why it takes that combination of lanes for people to drive, for transit, for biking and walking. It's really how do we optimize the mobility of people through the system. Oftentimes we'll talk about it from a technical standpoint in what is the person carrying capacity of the street, not how many cars or how many buses or how many bikes, but how do we move as many people through the corridor as possible. I think your other point about looking, can you finish the second part of your question? Or? Yep. Right, and you're absolutely right. People don't realize how subsidized driving is in terms of the roadway cost, providing for parking, providing for all of those things. I think where other types of trips start to become more competitive is in the travel time reliability standpoint and the use of your time. So if you think about switching out a car trip for a transit trip, especially a long regional commute trip, that time on the bus becomes yours again. You can read a book, you can do work, you can do emails. So it may take the same amount of time and hopefully less direct cost, but you're actually gaining your time back as well. So I think it's looking at the value from a broader perspective in addition to the financial component.
Kathleen, Audrey, this is a topic of keen interest. I'm so sorry to bring our program to a close today. We so appreciate the work that you do for our communities and for our region. We thank you for being here today. And as a token of our thanks, the Boulder Rotary Club will be donating 100 doses of vaccine to the Polio Plus International Polio Eradication Fund. Thank you for being here today.
Great.
Come back and join us.
Thank you so much.
See us.
Thank you.